Have you ever just stopped and really thought about your own face? I mean, why is everything where it is? Well, that's the jumping off point for a really fascinating sermon by Myung Moon called The Divine Architecture of Human Lineage and Love. Today, we're going to break it down and explore its pretty surprising ideas about design, our purpose, and our place in the universe. So yeah, let's start right there with that question about our faces. It's something we all just kind of take for granted, right? But this sermon uses it as a launch pad to get into some of the biggest questions you can ask about why we're even here. The first major point the sermon builds is something called the argument from design, and it uses our own faces as like Exhibit A. To really get this point across, the sermon asks us to just imagine a few small tweaks. For example, what if your nose was upside down? Suddenly, something as simple as a rain shower becomes a huge problem, right? You'd just be constantly filling up with water. Or, get this, imagine your mouth was above your eyes. The sermon points out that this would make eating a bowl of soup an absolute emergency, with hot liquid constantly threatening to pour into your eyes. It's a funny image, but it makes you think. And this idea of a specific purpose extends to literally every feature. Your eyebrows, they're not just there for decoration. They are perfectly angled to guide sweat away from your eyes. Eyelids, they're there to keep your eyes moist and clean. Even the shape of our nostrils is presented as this deliberate design to keep rain out. So, all of this leads to a pretty bold conclusion. According to the sermon, the sheer intricacy and, frankly, the common sense of where everything is placed on our faces just can't be an accident. It's presented as direct evidence of an intelligent designer. Okay, but if our physical design is so perfect, the sermon then pivots and asks, why do our inner lives feel so chaotic sometimes? And this introduces the next huge idea, this deep internal conflict that's inside every single one of us. And this really breaks down that core conflict. The sermon describes this constant battle going on inside us. Our mind, it wants to do the right thing. It seeks a higher purpose. But our body, it often pulls us in the exact opposite direction, always looking for that immediate gratification. The sermon gives this internal conflict a name you've probably heard before, the fall. It's described not so much as a single thing that happened way back when, but as this continuous state we're in, where humanity is just fundamentally out of sync with its original, perfect design. And to explain this state, the sermon uses this really powerful analogy. It says we are like these beautifully, masterfully crafted instruments that are now broken and totally out of tune. And to get fixed, well, we have to be sent back to the manufacturer. So if we're the broken instrument, what's the repair shop? According to this text, that's the whole point of religion, to be the place where we can be repaired, where our original harmony can finally be restored. Okay, so if religion is the repair shop, what's the main tool they use? The sermon argues that the fundamental force for fixing us, for restoring us, is love. And to explain why love is so incredibly central to everything, the sermon poses one of those huge classic philosophical questions. Which one comes first, life or love? And the answer in the sermon is completely clear. Love is the original force. The idea is that life didn't just, accidentally stumble upon love. No, love is the very power that sparked life and consciousness into being in the first place. Now, this is where things get really interesting. The sermon makes this wild claim that love is a unique force in the universe. It's described as the one thing that's an exception to the laws of physics, a system where you always get back more than you put in. Let me break that down. In any normal physical system, right, if you put in 100 units of energy, you always get less back. It's just basic physics. You lose some to heat, whatever. But the sermon says that with love, if you give 100 units, you get more than 100 back. Giving love doesn't empty you out. It actually multiplies and fills you up. And this self-replenishing, multiplying power of love is presented as the actual logical, even scientific basis for the idea of eternal life. The thinking is pretty simple. Because love is the one energy source that never ever runs out, a life that's centered on it can just keep going. Forever. So if a life of love can be eternal, what does that whole journey actually look like? Well, the sermon lays out this three-stage path for the human soul that completely reframes how we think about life and death. The sermon explains our entire existence as a sequence of 3 wombs. The first one is obvious, our mother's womb. It's an atmosphere of liquid. and its whole purpose is to prepare us to breathe air. The second womb is our life, right now, here on Earth, an atmosphere of air that is meant to prepare us for the final stage. So what is our main job here on Earth? According to the sermon, it's to develop our love lungs. It's a great metaphor, right? Just like a baby in the womb develops physical lungs to get ready to breathe air, our purpose in this life is to develop a spiritual capacity to breathe love in the next world. And the stakes for getting this preparation right are incredibly high. Showing up in the next world without this developed capacity for love would be like a newborn trying to breathe underwater. As the sermon puts it, very directly, without love, we would choke to death there. So when you look at it this way, what we call death completely changes its meaning. It's not an end at all. It's just the moment of a new birth, the transition out of the second womb, our earthly life, and into the third and final stage of our existence. And that's where the sermon leaves us, with this one final, really provocative question that kind of summarizes the whole point of our journey. If our life here on Earth is just the prep course, what does it actually take to get ourselves ready for an atmosphere that is made entirely of love?